Hi, folks. Graham here. Now, ordinarily I would say, from loading ready run, and that is still true, but for the purposes of this interview, I am here as a member of the creative text team for Unfinity, something I'm very proud of and not likely to shut up about anytime soon. The rest of the creative text team, bunch of great folks, was our team lead, Ariza Rulnick, a flavor text veteran, Austin Bridges, Loading Ready Run's own Kathleen DeVere and Cameron Lauder, and my two guests right now, internet comedy writer supreme Seanbaby and the one and only Mark Rosewater, who is... Mark, what's your actual job description over there at Wizards?
I am the head designer of Magic the Gathering.
And in the realm of Unfinity, you're also Mr. On Every Team?
Yeah, I led every single design team. So I led the Explorator design team, I led the Vision design team, I led the set design team. So I led it from the very first day of design to the very last day of design.
So how did Unfinity come to be? Let's start with that. Let's sort of give you the floor for a bit, Mark.
Okay.
How did Unfinity start, and where did it end up?
Unfinity was, I think, the only time that I did an unset where someone came to me, other than the very, very first one, that someone came to me and said, we'd like to do another unset. Usually it's a struggle getting unsets made. But Unstable did very, very well. It got reprinted 4 times. People had a lot of fun with it. So after Unstable came out, someone actually came to me and said, hey, would you like to make another unset? Which is a crazy thing to ask me, but they did. And I said, yes, of course I'd like to make another unset. And so the inspiration, one of the things we try to do with unsets is, what is a cool thing Magic normally does, but we can kind of do it through the lens of an unset, of a set that's geared toward more casual play, more humor, unsets have a certain sensibility to them. And so the idea I latched on to right away is I wanted to do a top-down set. So, for example, Innistrad is a gothic horror top-down set. Throne of Eldraine is a fairy tale top-down set. So mostly the idea of a top-down set is you start with some sort of thing that's familiar that the audience knows, and then you try to say, how can we capture it with Magic? How can Magic do this well-known area of tropes? How can Magic capture that? The goal of an unset is to try to do things we're not going to do in normal Magic. So my art director is named Dawn Mirren. Dawn had worked with me on Unstable, and she and I both signed up again to do the unset. And so I said to Dawn, I go, okay, I want to do a top-down set. I want to do something that's super flavorful, but I want to do something that normal Magic probably wouldn't do, because that's kind of what unsets do. And so I said to her, okay, why don't we go away, and in a week we'll come back and we'll share our ideas, and we'll go from there. So we came back a week later, and Dawn said, okay, I have it. I would like to do retro science fiction. Back in the 1950s, there was this sort of idea of what the future would be. And so she was really interested in doing science fiction, but through the lens of retro pop, sort of a 1950s take on it. I said, well, I kind of want to do like a circus, a carnival, an amusement park, something that's very sort of fun, that has a lot of trope space in it. And so we looked at each other and we said, could we just do both? Could we just do a retro science fiction space carnival? And we said, yes, we could. And from there, that's what we made.
So how did you get from that point to something that also included the actual Magic IP in the world?
We were trying to come up with stuff, and somebody drew a fortune teller, like a robotic fortune teller that looked like Jace. We get artists together for about 3 weeks, and we just sort of riff off ideas and like build the world, build the visual sense of what the world will be. So somebody in that drew what would end up becoming fortune teller in the set, and we were enamored by the idea of the park is run by someone named Myra the Magnificent. In fact, the official name of the park is Myra the Magnificent's Intergalactic Astrotorium of Fun. Myra she does what she needs to do to make the park work, right? And so we got the idea, like, yeah, she'd rip off people, she'd do whatever she wants to do. So the thing we thought was really funny is it has a Magic IP to it, but Myra probably didn't actually ask permission to do that. And so a lot, like, for example, the Ajani plushie, it's the wrong eye that's out, that's out. Like, it's just sort of like, there's this running joke in the park that, like, not all the things are technically correct. The fact that the park could have a Magic theme to it let us have all this opportunity to sort of make fun of Magic in a fun way. And so once we realized that was an opportunity, we just ran with it. We're like, this is awesome.
So then, Sean, aka Seanbaby, how did you get involved in this? What's your experience with Magic prior to being involved with Unfinity?
Geez, I played a lot in 1995 and 1996, I suppose. Once I started playing it, I think it probably grabbed me more than any other game. Like something about Magic's like basic design is probably the most influential thing on me as a game designer. So when I'm not writing the jokes, I do game design, and I can sit there all day and debate about how much a card could cost, for example. Like that's the kind of system design I really nerd out on. And so I played a lot, and I can say with that ego, I got a little better than my friends, and then it sort of became no fun for me or them, and just stopped playing after that. So it's been a long time since I was like hardcore Magic player. I'd get into it about every 2 years, revisit it. So this was very nostalgic for me getting involved with Magic.
So this was your first time, obviously, working on doing anything of this kind, of doing the creative text for actual Magic cards. It certainly was for us as well. It was us and you and Austin and Ari and Mark, and then it was sort of like, here's all these cards. Some of them have some suggested names, but they need names and flavor.
Yeah,
Go for it.
I like this process a lot. Like the internal tool we had, there's sort of a social media just for Magic card writers, which was great. And so occasionally we could sort of build off of each other's ideas, which I thought was pretty helpful and
It's
unusual.
called Lore Seeker, by the way.
Lore Seeker, of course.
Yeah.
Find it at home. So I really liked doing that. I liked when someone made like a pretty mediocre gag and someone said like, we could punch that up a bit. I'm sort of a solo writer, so it's nice to sort of be back in that writer's room setting. So that was fun. It was a good project.
How do you, Mark, having worked on, not just other unsets, but other Magic cards in general, how do you approach sort of this mostly blank slate of, all right, here's a card that maybe there's some art for it, come up with a name and flavor text?
The thing about names and flavor text that I have found is it's a lot like poetry in the sense that you're trying to convey a lot in as little space as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, if you're trying to get the right name to the card, it's just a matter of like, what are you trying to convey about the card? What exactly are you trying to say about the card? And then flavor text is usually, what is the angle you're trying to take? There's a certain style stand-up where you have a lot of like one-liners that are very quick and short.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first time I started doing flavor text, my comment to my girlfriend at the time, now wife, was, "Oh, this is a lot like writing stand-up."
I found that the two like challenging aspects of this for me was one, sort of coming up with, as you say, like a concise little one-liner that's good flavor text that in this case is also funny, because the whole point of this set is that it's supposed to be funny, and everyone has their own opinions of what actually counts as funny or not. And then the other one that I found interesting was that there'd be some stuff where you'd see what the card did mechanically, and you'd see the description that was given to the artist, and you'd see what the artist submitted. And so you have the art and the mechanics of the card, and you could sit there and think, I don't actually know that those combined get across the story that the designer was originally intending for this card. How can I then use this next level of the flavor text or the name to really tie this all together, to explain the joke or explain the mechanic, or sort of like tie this card up in a bow and be like, this was what the original designer, I believe, intended.
There's a really good example of this in Unfinity, a card called Mistakes Were Made. The card shows you this art, and the art shows like something's been demolished and they're like knocking it down, and there's this like little alien squirrel that's like running out of the rubble. And then the card talks about how you get to destroy something, but then like if you see a fire extinguisher, then you get a green squirrel. Like it's a very weird mismatch. And what I realized is, okay, the only way this all makes sense is if a fire destroyed everything. So like if this was the aftermath of a fire, it explains why things get destroyed. It explains the fire extinguisher. But like nothing inherently about this said there was a fire there per se. So like the note we gave you guys is, there was a fire. Explain why there was a fire. Who wrote this? Did either of you guys write this?
I believe this one was Kathleen's.
With Kathleen, okay.
Because Anti-Grub is a pre-existing character referenced in some Lorwyn cards, if I recall correctly.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Something I found really fun about the creative team and that that sort of philosophy of the Astrotorium was that because we were given the world guide where it's like, this is what the Astrotorium is like, this is what Myra's like, you know, it's fun and exhilarating, but you know, the rides are breaking down and there's all that stuff. But that the creative text team, so like myself and the other folks and Sean, that we also just sort of decided to really try to get across the notion that yes, all of that is terrible and the rides break down and it's, you know, it's like an exhilarating place, but it's also scary and all that. But it's not a bad place to work.
Yes.
We were really keen on being like, no, Myra pays a livable wage and there's benefits and it's, you know, we were like, we're gonna make this not be a bad place to be an employee.
Yeah, I think what's the black card? There's a piece of flavor text that does exactly that.
I think it's Night Shift of the Living Dead.
Yes, Night Shifts of the Living Dead. That's the card.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the Astrotorium, even the dead make a living wage.
Yeah. In what limited world building we can add through the names and flavor text, that was one that we were all like, yeah.
As with any tropes, there's things you want to avoid. Like there's like, you know, whatever the trope is, there's some tropes that were kind of ugly tropes of the past that you just don't want to do. And so like one of the things that's really important to us is nobody's mistreated here. Like the employees aren't mistreated, the performers aren't mistreated, none of the animals are mistreated. Like none of that was happening in this. You know, there might be, Myra might be doing weird stuff, but everybody that works for Myra was taken care of. That Myra was very careful to take care of her, and that was the theme that definitely runs through things.
Sean, from your perspective, coming into this, you know, as you say, like this is not a kind of writing that you've done in a while. What were some of the what was a challenge for you here?
I think the challenge was just being probably 5 years out of date with my magic lore. So it was like they were all sitting around like, hey, let's make some great magic jokes. I'm like, right, like the Shivan dragon joke is going to real land like 20 years after that card's been banned or whatever. But so it took some research, but I think it's okay. I think it turned out okay. You sort of sit there and let your brain expand through everything you've ever learned in your entire life. And the more you've learned and the more you know, the better this will be, the longer this will take. And then anytime it pings against something interesting, you do the process all over again about every little thing. Then you check with yourself if you suck. You check with yourself if these are all other people's ideas. And then anytime your phone rings or someone comes into your office, you have to start the process all over and it shatters your heart. And that's writing. And it's if you can do anything else, do it. I think that was Kurt Vonnegut. I don't remember. But yeah, that's the process here as it was in all things.
Is there any of the submissions that you had for this set that you were either like really banging your head against or that you were conversely just sort of like, oh yeah, no, I got this one. I nailed this.
I think I at least banged my head against every single one of these. There was a Herloon Minotaur song that I wrote that I sang for probably 5 days straight. I have no idea if the music translated into that card. I don't think we even used it because it's absurd. But yeah, I think I wrote a trapeze Herloon Minotaur song that in my head was a rock anthem that we all knew. But yeah, that's the kind of like thing I'm talking about where your brain will just go down an avenue and you're like, well, this is where it's going. I should follow it. Maybe I went crazy. Maybe I lived in a world where there's Herloon Minotaur songs.
The card is called Minotaur de Force. I believe it's the card you're talking about.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
That's our Minotaur trapezist. Minotaur de Force is one of my favorite phrases. Like one of the things when you're doing comedy writing, when you just get sort of a phrase, you just fall in love with it.
I very early on latched on to the phrase funambulist, and I would just sort of throw that on to various cards, and then eventually, quite late in the set, because we do the cards in batches. Quite late in the set, Ari was like, there was one of a tightrope walker, and Ari was like, hey Graham, this can probably be the funambulist. I was like, all right, I'll shut up about it.
Yeah, I remember you kept putting it in and we're like, that's not a funambulist. That's you know, you have to wait for the tightrope walker.
Well, that's okay. I'm still really happy with Goblin Cruciverbalist. So
oh yeah, that's a great name.
Goblins, and specifically their names and flavor text, have always been like, they've always been a bit silly, and that's always been something that I've really enjoyed. So getting to actually work on goblins was that was a big deal for me. So
Goblins in a normal set would be kind of silly, and there's always the question of like, how do you get that one step up on goblins to make them a little sillier than normal?
I can't just referencing the Space Family Goblins, and I can't believe I got that name through.
Oh, that was a slam dunk.
Thank you.
Ari and I would get in the room, and then we'd say like sometimes like it was clear one answer was clearly the answer. We didn't even discuss it. Like, well, it's clearly that, and we'd move on. And the Space Family Goblinson was one of those. As was Scared Stiff, which was that yours as well?
I think that might have been somebody else, but I remember that was the first like week or the first focus or something, and that was when I was like, hey, can this guy be a coward? And you were like, oh, I don't know, let me go check. And you went and asked the rules manager, and we're like, yeah, this is a coward now. And I was like, ooh, I've contributed mechanically. I love Sean, your flavor text on the Space Family Goblinson, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed that.
I think I went because you're right. The goblins are so silly that I think I framed that in a way of like, how would the people in this world refer to goblins?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of helped me, like, I guess, intellectualize like how someone would talk about them, I guess.
One of my favorite parts about the set that I really enjoyed was getting into the mindset of the average people that work at the park.
Yeah.
Like, one of my absolute favorite characters is a character named Truss, who's the chief engineer. And there's just endless flavor text about like, hey, Truss, come help. This problem's happening, you know. Like
park reentry.
Oh, park reentry. Where like it's this flavor text. I wrote this one. It's sort of like, hey, Truss, the entry software is reading babies as hot dogs again. And so like this happens all the time.
A baby's DNA is 40% hot dog. I mean, that's earth science already.
Oh, there's a card called Black Hole. And this card went through Infinite because we couldn't even agree what the art was. Like, there was a big debate whether it was a black hole or not. And finally, enough people said, oh, I think it's a black hole. We said, okay, we'll just call it Black Hole. But this flavor text is making fun of, at amusement parks, they code things. Like, they don't want to say there's a fire, so, like, you know, code D means there's a fire or something.
Right.
And so I just love the idea of, you know, there's black holes occasionally. That's the kind of thing that happens at the park. And so they have a code for black holes. That I just thought that was infinitely funny.
Dark donut. It was neat seeing when, you know, you'd have someone throw in a suggestion that was good, but maybe wasn't quite there. Or someone else would throw in a different suggestion. And then someone else on the team, or most likely Ari being the team lead, would be like, I've taken a bit from this idea and a bit from this idea and combined them into this other idea. And this now works better.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples is there's a card called Petting Zookeeper. I think I pitched the general concept to the joke, which is Myra's kind of cheap. And so if you call it a petting zoo, then she doesn't have to buy cages. But I didn't quite get the execution right. And I think, Graham, this is the actual final joke is your joke, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like, here's the basic idea, but can someone make this joke slightly funnier? And then you actually wrote the joke, but I feel like I did the layup for your dunk.
And that's the great part about working on a team like this, is that there were so many situations like that where it is sort of like, you know, you can be like, oh, I really feel like I see the joke here. I'm not quite there, but I think I have this. I'm going to write this down. And then someone else, you know, can then see that and go, oh, let me carry that across the line for you, you know? And it's good. Thank you. Good. Thanks. As fun as it is, to get to sort of point at a card and be like, I wrote that. And there's still plenty that everyone on the team gets to actually do that too. There's much more in the set that's sort of like, yeah, I helped. And it's nice. I like that.
I did the and. That's my and.
I mean, Sean, you know this from years of comedy writing, that like the words have to be so small and specific. Like you have to, the tolerances on what makes something funny is so small.
Sure. I've been through that with many magazines where the editor will come and be like, I'm the editor, I got to make some changes. And then like 14 jokes don't land. I'm like, it's great editing. Thanks.
Matt Tabak was our editor. And the words have to fit on the card. Like, one of the challenges is, oh, this doesn't fit. We would try to save the jokes where we could save them. And sometimes it's like, okay, we have to rewrite it. And Matt would say, you know, here's how long it can be. Like, here's the point where you don't have space anymore. And it was always a challenge to try to keep the joke alive and figure out what the joke was. But is there a way to play the joke in a way that's a little bit shorter without losing the beat of the joke? Because in comedy, it's all about the placement of the words is everything.
Right. Can you just take away all the abilities, make them like a 4/5 creature with maybe just trample? I don't know. Just give us a little more space.
The other thing that happens sometimes is there's multiple really good pieces of flavor text, and obviously we can only pick one. And so sometimes you pick one over another. Like, one of the things we care about is world building, right? We want the set as a whole to have a feel. And so there's a lot of references. So, for example, there's a card called Icing Manipulator. And in it, we have to name flavors. The joke is, she's talking about people's favorite flavors. We knew we had one of them. We could just make up a planet, right? It's going to be funny to make up a flavor you've never heard of. But hey, why not make reference to another card if we can? Well, we had several other planets that we referenced. And one was Glurg. There's a creature called It Came from Glurg, which is a blue-green creature. And so, if we're going to reference a planet, hey, we can reference the planet that we reference, trying to make this internal synergy and trying to have jokes that build over one card is also very cool. And that's why a lot of the notes we would give is, we're going to use this piece of flavor text. Can we build on that somewhere else? For example, Pietra is she's the human that does all the programming for the clowns, because the clowns are all robots in this world. And she programs all the clowns. And so, okay, she's in charge of the clowns, and she shows up in 3 pieces of flavor text just because whenever you're talking about the clowns, well, Pietra is the one that's going to talk about the clowns.
Part of I think the biggest monkey wrench I threw into this process was I really liked how all the customers were in a lot of grave danger. That was my favorite thing about the set, that I had to pull back. I'm I bet they don't want every single card to reference dead carnival goers. So I was maybe I shouldn't maim anyone in this one.
There are, but so for example, Far Out. Is Far Out yours?
Oh, yeah. I think that one might. I think Kathleen mentioned on Twitter that was mine. I would have not remembered, but she was like, oh, yeah, of course. I remember from a year ago when we wrote that. Who exactly on that list of people wrote.
The joke here is, and they die?
That guy's dead. Absolutely, that guy's dead.
Yeah.
I killed a lot of people on these cards.
I'm sure that much like apocryphally other theme parks, Myra will have the guest technically off premises before anything is determined legally for liability purposes.
There's a character named Rex Nebula, which is an awesome name. I'm very proud of that name, by the way. So he's the captain of the park, and he is not the best captain. He constantly hits things, and so one of the things was he backed over a planet. And I think that was just a throwaway line that was in the style guide. Mm-hmm. And clearly when you get a bunch of comedy writers whoa, he backed over a planet? No. We're not letting that go.
I don't recall what card it eventually appeared on, but I believe Kathleen framed Captain Nebula's terrible piloting as a tragic parking accident, which I think is one of my favorite turns of phrase.
I think that might be on bumper cars. A lot of the bumper car are referencing his poor driving skills. These bumper cars remind me of the time your amusement park smashed into my planet. Oh, originally that was a Yelp review from Ambassador Florby Bloop, and it's 1 out of 12 or something, and we couldn't fit it all in. But that originally was a Yelp review about how Ambassador Florby Bloop says you're destroying my planet. Really lessened to the park for me.
Sean, I think these were yours. I can't remember, but there's a character who was doing ride reviews.
I did do some Yelp review style.
Yeah, and I think that those
that might have been this might have been yours then.
I didn't want to say anything in case I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was mine. If it was framed like a Yelp review.
Yeah, it was framed like a Yelp review, so it must be yours.
Yeah, because I remember during the process that character showed up in a lot of suggested flavor texts, and then didn't end up showing up in the selections. But then several of them showed up on the attractions.
The attractions, because we had more space, there's a lot of stuff that we weren't able to find elsewhere. We would put on the attractions.
On Spinny Ride, expect to be out of commission for about a week. It's awesome. Salzon's ride review.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you also do the Junior Roller Coaster?
Yeah, the Junior Roller Coaster is great. That was another thing that the creative team was like, we all agree this ride is completely safe.
Yes, it's the one safe ride.
Yeah. The coaster was so gentle, I was able to write my review while I was still on it. Salzon's
Yes.
ride review.
Yep.
That one's just
Yeah,
nice.
one of the things that's fun
Yeah.
that's very common for flavor text writers to do is come up with things that weren't there yet, but then as you start seeing them, it becomes a theme that you start weaving into the set. That's a real fun part of working together is people just inspire other people to do stuff.
Yeah, very quickly I got down on a piece of flavor text the idea of the Acertorium waiver, and I don't think it ended up showing up as much as maybe we thought it might, but it definitely pops up once or twice.
The card's called Incident Has Occurred, and there's a bunch of destruction cards that destroy things, and so we needed a lot of flavor text about things got destroyed. And so, yeah, this was the card that references the waiver. Also, in the packs, there is ad cards in the packs, and Ari got to write some humor stuff that went in some of the packs. Pieces of the waiver are on the ad card.
No way!
So there's like
Nice.
page 12, page 64, page 3021.
Oh, yes.
So that does show up in packs, but not on cards. It's on there's some humorous ad cards that are in it, and it's on that.
That's so awesome. That's great.
Dawn came up with the idea very early on, like before world building, of what if all the clowns were robots? I don't know where this happened, but early on, somebody wrote in all caps for the robot.
Yeah, robots are always screaming at me, and I just wanted to bring my experience to the cards.
And then we decided early on, all robots talk in caps, and that's just a thing about robots. So all robots in the set scream at you. That's just what they do.
I think my favorite of that, and I don't know if the actual flavor text was Sean or Cameron. It was definitely one of you, of the draconian gate bot. You must be this tall to ride. You have 10 seconds to comply.
I can't tell you, but I like it.
It's good.
Originally, it was like 15 seconds, and it didn't fit. So the reason it's 10 seconds
That's
is it's
funny.
shorter.
Yeah.
I love the stuff that comedy writers have to care about. It's great. Well, hey, that was awesome. That was great to catch up with you both and chat about working on this ridiculous set. So yeah, thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Well, it was fun. It's fun talking comedy writing. I don't get to do that often.
Sean, real quick, where can the viewers at home find you on this incredible internet?
I'm on 1900hotdog.com now. Me and Robert Brockway do a daily website, the final comedy website. We make jokes about things.
And Mark, if people want to talk to you about, say, I don't know, Magic the Gathering, I guess, where might they do that?
On Tumblr, I have a blog called Blogatog at like markrosewater.tumblr.com. I'm also on Twitter at Maro254. And I have a weekly column called Making Magic, and I have a weekly blog called Drive to Work. So there's no endless ways to hear me talk about magic. And then you can use my blog or any social media to contact me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on lots of places. But I love to hear from you. So if you guys have thoughts, especially on this set, I would love to hear feedback on like flavor text and names. That would be awesome. To tell me what you guys think about the flavor text and names. That would be great feedback.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. And thank you all at home for watching. Really appreciate it. Bye.